Headphone Zone has been pretty busy over the last year or so because they've been doing a whole bunch of collaborations with a bunch of brands. And this, of course, is with Tangzu. They have done the first gen as well, but this one does have a few changes. This is the Wan'er S.G II. Thank you to the folk at Headphone Zone for making this review possible by sending me this demo unit. All thoughts and opinions are my own as always. So let's jump into how this is built and its unboxing. This does carry on the tradition of having a very nice looking box, but what I do find a little upsetting is that it does not come with a cleaning cloth on the inside like the previous generation did. This is just a printout of what the cover has. I would have liked that cleaning fabric cloth that the first gen came with. It would have been a nice touch. Not that I used it, to be very honest, but it just adds to that touch of class before you first see your IEMs in the box. And then of course, when you move this out of the way, you will get the IEMs as well that are housed very nicely in the box. And you do also get a cable with this. And what's also pretty cool is it doesn't come with the usual 3 sets of ear tips. It comes with 6 sets of ear tips, all ranging from small, medium and large. 3 of them being of a tighter bore with a different material, and the other being a wider bore that I find a little more comfortable. The material seems to be a little softer. It's almost like it's a medical silicone, and thanks to that wider bore, it does change the characteristics of its stage as well as the way it handles its bass to a certain extent. And then moving on to the IEMs, these do seem to be a little more compact than the previous gen, if I'm remembering that correctly. I don't have one of the older gens with me, but this does seem to have a much nicer fit and finish on it. The detail on it is a lot more intricate, if I'm not forgetting, and even the section where the 0.78 mm pin connects is different. It has been altered from what I remember. And of course, you don't see any glue holding the seams together for the faceplate. It's pretty nicely done. And I really do like the design they've got on the inside here with the Headphone Zone brand in it. It's a very smartly done finish. It certainly shows that a lot of effort and love has gone into this design. And then when it comes to its comfort, this is, I'd say, I think maybe a little more comfortable than the previous gen. I think in part because it might be a little bit smaller. It seems a little bit more compact than the previous one, if I'm remembering correctly again. Moving on to the cable, well, this does have the ear loops that sort of come out of this. One side is terminated to the 0.78 mm pins that connect to the IEM, and the other side of this is terminated to a 3.5 mm connector. Now, you can get this in a USB Type-C variant as well, so you can choose which one is for you. And I do like this cable as well. It's a pretty nice cable, but the one thing I don't like about it is a bit grippy. It's not fabric, but it is some sort of a soft plastic around it. And the thing is with this, if it grips on your collar or your shirt while you're listening to stuff during a listening session when it's really quiet, this can be microphonic to a certain extent. And then what's cool about this particular cable is that this does come with a microphone. So this microphone over here does seem to look like the previous gen's microphone. I could be wrong about this, but it does remind me exactly how the previous one looked. And I remember liking how that one sounded. So if you do want to know how this one will sound, with how it will carry your voice over to your recipient, here's a quick demo to show you how it will perform. So I'm talking to you from the microphone in my phone right now. So this is pretty much how it's going to sound if you are talking to any of your buddies while you game or take any phone calls. Now I am in my room, so there's not going to be too much outside noise, but if you're doing this in public, IEMs and phones usually, I mean, phones do have some sort of ENC now, but IEMs do not. So anyway, I've been on my phone microphone all this time, so you should get an idea of how the phone sounds. And I've plugged into the DD Hi-Fi high-res DAC that Headphone Zone collaborated with DD Hi-Fi with. It does have a microphone pass-through, so I'll just switch over to this. It should hand over from the microphone to the DD Hi-Fi, which I think is just done. It's saying through headset. So this is the microphone that I'm using right now with the Tangzu, and I mean, this is pretty much how it's going to sound carried over to your recipient via games or if you're on a phone call. And of course, if you do hold it closer, I guess the sound will change a bit. So you'd be the best judge to see if there is a shift, because you are sitting in the reviewer seat right now. And of course, this does have a little button as well, so you can use it for pausing, playing and all that sort of stuff. So anyway, that's the quick demo for the Tangzu Wan'er microphone, the SG2 variant, of course. And I'll see you in the chapter about sound. These come with 10 mm dynamic drivers, have a frequency response of 20 Hz all the way up to 20,000 Hz, and have a very easy to drive low resistance of just 19 ohms. And by low, I mean, I was listening to this at about maybe 20% volume, 25% volume. Now, I was listening to this through a Rose's Elsa RZ550. This is a very powerful little DAC amp. So with that in particular, I don't have to go past 2025. It's more than loud enough. I have tried the Headphone Zone DD Hi-Fi high-res DAC with it, and with that I have to crank maybe 5% more to get something of equivalent output. So the overall output percentage will vary on what kind of DAC amp you are using to listen to these IEMs, of course. But I think 2025, maybe 30 might be a fun listen. Don't go beyond, I'd say, 40%, 45% over prolonged periods of time if you intend on preserving your hearing, because these can get quite loud. And then moving on to its overall stage. Well, stage-wise, I seem to remember the original Tangzu being a little wider horizontally. This seems very restricted, like it's literally till the IEM, maybe a little less. There's very evidently a tight bubble within my head, but there might be slightly more vertical stage, very slightly. I'm talking about within my head. It's not specifically on a horizontal plane, but very slightly up compared to the last gen. But despite having this very intimate stage, its separation is pretty good. I think its imaging has gotten a little sharper compared to the previous gen. It does seem to be much easier to pull out a lot more details and nuance with this set of IEMs. I remember the original Tangzus to be more on the warmer sounding side. So when things are usually warmer, they tend to be not as well detailed, especially if they're overly warm. But I found those to be pretty well balanced when it came to its warmth. This is certainly not as warm sounding as those. And then of course moving on to its highs, mids and lows. Well, this set of IEMs for sure is definitely a slight tweak. I'd say it doesn't literally remind me of the old gen. There's definitely been some work that's gone into this. Most likely it's got new hardware, or maybe they've just tweaked things. I'm not too certain about the inner workings of what they've done. But the higher frequency specifically seems to have a lot more air. And by that I mean there were some tracks that I've heard in open spaces, or maybe not even open, maybe in cathedrals, open recordings where you hear a lot of reverb, a lot of linger, a lot more decay. I don't remember the original Tangzus doing that as well as this does. So they've definitely worked on something over there. Shimmer, sparkle, percussive stuff over there does have a nice attack. It's got a very enthusiastic approach towards delivering itself to you without being aggressive. It's not at any point going to hurt you or be too aggressive over there. It's kind of like the previous gen, where it's emphasized but subtle enough to not upset anyone listening to it. And then the mid-range also, well, here is where I found there to be a bit of an accentuation in the upper mid somewhere. Now, most of the stuff I've listened to does not seem to have sibilance. In fact, I was sitting and listening for sibilance because it sounded like it was a lot more prominent over there. But the thing is, every song I heard until the very last track that I listened to before recording this video was fine. But that last track was hitting that sibilance. It was cutting through. Now, it was an older track. So if you are, the kind of person who likes to listen to maybe stuff from the 80s, early 90s, or late 70s, a lot of stuff wasn't recorded very well. So you do get emphasized sibilance. So if that's the kind of stuff you listen to, I think this might cross that threshold more often than not. Whereas if you're listening to a lot newer stuff, late 90s, mid 90s, early 2000s onwards, better recordings, better mixing, I don't think the sibilance factor is going to upset you much. Then moving on to the rest, well, the mids and the lower mids are also, well, I wouldn't say they're recessed. They do sound pretty well balanced. It sounds pretty level, because male-female vocals sound, pretty rounded. Nothing is really pulled away, which is a nice welcome. And at the same time, there is, thanks to its imaging, very good instrument and vocal separation. So even if you're trying to pull out any details, nuance between vocals and mids, vocals and instruments and so on in that region, it's fairly easy to do. And again, I think more so with this generation than the previous, because of the tweaks in the tuning that they have done with this specific setup. So again, it's performing very well for a set of IEMs, even in this range. And then moving on to the lower frequencies. Well, the lower frequencies, it just seems like it's a little more enthusiastic here than the previous gen. Now, this could be because I'm listening to a slightly more powerful DAC amp that could be a factor, but it definitely does sound a little more prominent than I remember the previous Tangzu sounding. It seems to have a little more on the lower, in the sub-low frequencies, with certain rumbles, I'm not talking about acoustic music. I'm talking about if you listen to heavier stuff like electronic and so on. If you're looking for that lower frequency rumble, I wasn't expecting this to do it, but it does it. So I realized that I was listening to the black ear tips, which have a tighter bore. Now, if you have a tighter bore on these, they are little, well, they are somehow a little tighter, a little more, there's a little more kick in the lower frequencies. I am not really a fan of that. I prefer, a slightly fuller bass response, in the sense it needs to have more feel, in the sense needs to have more mass to it. And I don't want things too aggressive in the bass. I prefer them to be, there enough, but not too much, because then it can eat into the mids and the high frequencies. But having said that, despite putting the black ear tips with the tighter bore, this does not have that much bass where it will eat into a lot of detail. So it's definitely very well tuned. But I do prefer the wider bore, because the bass seems a little more composed. It seems a little more relaxed. It's not, trying to get to your ear that much, quicker with a certain sense of anxiety. I do prefer the wider bore. In fact, if you've been watching my channel for a while, you'll know I'm not a fan of very heavy bass. So I think it's definitely a very nicely tuned set of IEMs. They've definitely upped, I think, everything. They've definitely taken it up a slight notch. I think because the previous gen was something that was, I think, beloved by all audiophiles. So something in this price range is definitely a set of IEMs that I think a lot of seasoned audiophiles did like with the previous gen, and I think they will like with this gen. But I'd say the only real negative is that potential sibilance factor if you're listening to older music. Now, it's only when you're listening to older stuff, and maybe if you're only listening to something with a lot more power, with an amp that has a lot more power, it will be enunciated that much more. But I think otherwise, it's a very nice sounding set of IEMs in this price range. And the other thing I don't like, again, is that little card. This is a cardboard piece, man. It's not the old fabric cloth that you could clean the IEMs with. I did like that. So anyway, if you do want to buy these, I would recommend them. They are definitely nice. If you have an older set of SG ones, I'd say hold on to them. They're a lovely set. This is not an upgrade. It's more of an evolution. There's a slight tweak in certain regions. And it's not that tweaking your older set with EQ will make it sound like this. No, please don't expect that to happen. But I genuinely think that if you want something with a little more air, or a little more push in the upper mids and a little more emphasis in the sub-low frequencies, I think this is a nice set of IEMs. So if you do want to go to pick these up, well, this is available on the Headphone Zone website, of course. Now, this is specifically the, I think it's a limited edition with the headphone branding on it. It's beautifully done, I must say. The craftsmanship on this is top notch. It's amazing that you're getting something with this kind of workmanship at this price range. Now, the thing is, at this point in time, while I'm recording this video, this does have an MRP of 2199 rupees, but it is being sold for 1990 rupees. Now, there is a sale going on right now, as far as I know. I'm not sure how long the sale is going on for, but if you do want to buy this at this price, you can rush to the site and pick it up, of course. And yeah, there you have it. That's my review on the Tangzu Wan'er S.G collaboration with Headphone Zone. And I do hope that this video has given you a better understanding for these IEMs. And of course, if you would like to support the channel, I'm sure you know exactly how to. But of course, thank you for tuning in for some sound advice.